So, are we witnessing the end of Google? And is Googling just for old people? That's the subject of today's video. And I can tell you guys, I'm 49, so I guess I'm an old person now. And I totally use Google. I grew up using Google, use it all the time. I'm on YouTube, as you know, which is part of Google. And Google is basically second nature to me. However, there is a whole new generation of people out there on the internet. I'm sure you know. The young kids are all on TikTok, dancing, doing whatever young kids do on TikTok, or they're Snapchatting each other, or they're doing Discord, these kind of things. Or if you're on the Elon Musk camp, you're on Twitter/X, and you're out spreading your misinformation, disinformation over there, and your memes. And Elon's trying to convince you to give him $8 a month to do said things, right? There's lots of competition for Google these days, and they are not necessarily going to be the dominant company forever. And if you track markets, these kind of things, this is sort of what you're watching. You're watching trends. Where are consumers spending their time, their money, their attention, and their focus? And this sort of subject came up today. There was an article today in the Wall Street Journal, which is really interesting. It says, Googling is for old people. That's a problem for Google. And whenever I see these kind of things, like, oh my God, I'm old. And it's funny because when you're young, and trust me, guys, I totally understand. When you're young, you're like, why do people always mention their age? It's so weird, right? But the older you get, you just think about it more because it feels like the younger generations are like so different than you. For me, I'm like, how are you not using Google anymore? Are you guys crazy? But for some people, they're all about AI these days, right? They'll ask a question to the AI spits it out. And this is wherein lies the problem. But it's not just an AI problem. You could argue it's a Google problem. Is how do you search for information? How do you get information? How do you know what information is true, not true? And what is shown to you first? Let me give you an example just from a real world example. I was just at a department store yesterday here in Busan. And in fact, it's fascinating because it's a little bit different than the way you guys shop, and I'll explain why. So we have a Samsung store and an Apple store right next to each other. The Samsung store would be an official one, but they're still going to need to partner with the department store. It's just how things work here. We have an Apple store, but it's not actually an official Apple store. It's a reseller, which is very, very common in Korea. I think there's only like maybe one or two official Apple stores here. So there's a bunch of like sort of fake Apple stores, you could call them, but they're resellers. And then they offer a bunch of Apple products and then have a bunch of like sort of partner products there. And and also too, I'll mention this. We also have a Logitech store, which I spent a lot of time in. That one's pretty cool. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to a Logitech store, but we have them actually here in Korea, and we have different products than what you would have. I'm mentioning these three things because I always like to go to the store and look at new tech stuff. I know I don't have a tech channel, but I actually like to look at this stuff. It's cool. Or be it TVs, computers, etc. And I'll mention this. I was actually looking at headphones, and it was fascinating because there's so many dang choices out there. And I'm not selling you headphones, I'm just telling you my experience. So Samsung has a bunch of their choices. The Apple one, they had like a couple different brands. It was like, I can't remember. It was like, was it Pebble or something like that? There was like I just don't remember. They had like, but three different brands. I know Sony was there also. I think it was called Pebble or something like that. And then the Logitech one had all their Logitech headphones or whatever. So the first thing you do for me when I got home is I Googled, what's the best headphones, right? And Google then shows you a whole bunch of stuff, as you guys know how Google works. Now, one of the things that is interesting also is I also then, after looking at Google stuff, I went to Amazon and searched there, what is the best headphone or whatever. And then it showed me a bunch of stuff. And it was fascinating because according to the data that I was looking at here, and I'll tell you the numbers, this is another article from the Wall Street Journal. It says Google's share of the US search ad market is expected to drop below 50% next year for the first time in over a decade. And that's according to research firm eMarketer. Amazon is expected to have 22.3% of the market this year with 17.6% growth, compared to Google's 50.5% share with its 7.6 growth. So it's actually really funny how the data in the Wall Street Journal corresponds to my personal actions of like how I learn about products, right? Like literally you read through customer reviews and you read through whatever, things you can find. You'll find videos on YouTube of like, and that's what I was doing yesterday. I was watching like what headphones to look at or whatever. And I would search for individual models, etc. Right? So this is kind of, you have to understand how people search information and why they get that. The issue is though, and you guys may or may not know this kind of stuff, is many people can spend money to get your search results at the top. And this has actually been a big issue among the tech companies, and sometimes countries go after said tech companies. Like, so for example, I just saw this hit in the news wire just now. Canada sues Google for anti-competitive conduct in online advertising, right? And so it's, Canada does this kind of stuff. US does. I know Europe, they're strict on these things. Every country is going to be different on how they treat these big tech companies, but it is a big deal because we're talking about, money. We're talking about dollars of like, okay, which headphones am I going to buy? Which reviews am I going to see first? And essentially how this game is played, and we'll talk about Amazon, is that, for example, if you want your product to appear first, you just basically dump a bunch of money on Amazon, and then every time someone searches for headphones or, winter jacket or shoes or whatever, that may come up first. And this actually is really apparent too. You guys, I mentioned from time to time, I have a book on Amazon, right? It's called Positive Angle. You should check it out. And part of what Amazon wants me to do, right, as a writer, as an author, is they want me to give them money to advertise my book, and then you can essentially, move your book to the top of search results. And it's kind of funny because I think for some people, if you get sucked down that, that Amazon advertising path, you can end up like completely losing, money on the book because, you're spending so much money on advertising just to, move copies, etc. What's sad about though how that game is played is if you don't spend any ad dollars, which I just don't, people may never find your book or organically, which is really, it's kind of a travesty and a shame. And this is sort of goes back to like how people are essentially paying to get their messages up front. And that's actually very similar to Elon Musk's thing of, on X, if you pay that, I think it's $8 a month, you get that blue check mark, and then suddenly your messages get more, promoted. And then if you don't pay the $8 a month, then no one sees your, your messages, say on X. I can't comment on Blue Sky or Threads. Actually, I can on Threads. I take that back. So I think, well, I don't know about Threads specifically. So Threads is part of Instagram/Facebook. I know for sure on Instagram you can become a member, and then same thing, your posts will get seen more frequently. I'm not sure if Facebook has that kind of thing because Facebook's different. You're supposed to have a connected friend work and not necessarily, trying to share your posts with strangers, but it is certainly a thing on YouTube, guys. If you want to advertise your videos on YouTube, you can totally do that. And this is a fascinating thing about this whole world that we live in, to where how do people rise to the top of search results, right? How does that done? Is it all paid advertising, or is there some things that are organic? I can tell you on my channel, I don't pay for any advertising for my channel. I just try my best to put out what I consider to be useful and good content. But to be fair to how the system works, if you want to be popular on Google, a couple ways. One is you can pay for a bunch of fake views, fake comments. You can advertise your channel if you want. And also too, you post things that people want to hear, which isn't necessarily the same thing as posting good information. Just think about that for a minute. And this is sort of why I'm mentioning this at the end of Google. What do young people want? So what do people want to hear? Just for example, they want to hear that their opinions are correct, that they're right, and that the other side is wrong. That's what people want to hear. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. That has no relevance. And what I find so crazy about this stuff, and you'll see it from time to time in comments, people say, "Oh, Chris, you seem like a really nice guy, but I just don't agree with you on everything." People actually write that, and it's funny. It's just like, okay, so I guess in the world that we live in, you're just looking for people that are just like you, that agree with 100% of everything that you think, feel, and say. And if you don't find that, you're going to go find another channel or whatever. And so then for some channels, if they just want to be, quote, popular, whatever that means, they all then just basically pander to you and feed you whatever you want to hear. And think of it this way, guys. Let's say you have a friend who, we'll just say eats too many hamburgers, okay? They don't want to hear that. They don't want to eat they ate too many hamburgers, right? Even though you're actually giving them good advice of like, hey, maybe you shouldn't eat so many hamburgers. Maybe you should eat some vegetables. Maybe you should get some exercise. Like, which I think is pretty basic advice. But your friend, actually, they just wanted to go to channels that is all about how awesome hamburgers are and that you should eat them all the time and you'll be fantastic if you eat said hamburgers. So I know it's a complicated issue, and it opens a whole block of wax when they mention hamburgers or whatever, and people lose their focus. Now they're starting to make on food before we're talking about headphones. But this goes back to this whole system that we're in right now, how we get information, how does it pertain to markets? How do you understand what's going on in markets? How do you decipher what's truthful and not truthful? It's tough out there. I'm honest, be honest with you. It's tough out there. I spend every day, and for me, this is a fascinating topic because I like to track the news. I like to know what's going on in the world. I like to follow the markets. I also like to hang out with the community that teaches me new stuff every day. That's something that I really appreciate with you guys. And so, for me specifically, I like Google. I don't work for Google per se. I'm on YouTube, but I find it sad though if we do go this route to where everyone's on a TikToky, 1 minute, everyone's dancing videos, essentially what it is, and basically dumbing down of culture. Or we go into this, world to where I have to, join a tribe of people that just all want to be, quote, correct, regardless of whether or not, something's truthful or not. And it's ironic because one of the things that people complain about, and it's kind of funny, they can't hear themselves speak or hear what their messages they're saying, but they complain about like, oh, the media slash is always dishonest to me, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what people are really trying to say is that they just want to tune into information sources and things that confirm their beliefs, whether or not they're true or not. And so one of the things I've always appreciated about Google, right? And I understand there's problems with Google, be it the paid hour ads that can reach the top of your search results when you do search, but that it gives me a ton of information and I'm free to go through like various viewpoints and stuff like that and read through everything. And generally speaking, that's how I educate myself. And hopefully, you guys are doing the same, also watching this channel. I Google things just like I would hope people do because I wanted different perspectives. And I also want to learn as much as I can and get to the truth. And even if it doesn't necessarily go with my quote beliefs, and I think that's a kind of a fundamental understanding of the world. So I just wanted to share some thoughts on this. Is this the end of Google and is Googling for old people? I hope not. I hope young kids will still use Google or okay, don't have to use Google per se. Just use a search engine, I'll put it that way, in order to find information in a variety of things, opposed to just going to quote AI, and I say quote AI, it's a whole other ball of wax, but just to find, quote, one answer that may or may not necessarily be accurate. So that's my thoughts on this one. Please share yours. Is this the end of Google and is Googling for old people? Thank you for your time, and I'll catch you in the next video.